What if the girl your staff laughed at, insulted, and threw out of the showroom turned out to be the billionaire who owns the entire company? She walked in with worn-out shoes, a secondhand coat, and a quiet voice just to admire the cars she once dreamed of designing. But they didn't see potential. They saw poverty. They mocked her. They called security. And just as the doors closed behind her, a black car pulled up. A man stepped out. And when he walked in, every smile vanished. Because the girl they humiliated wasn't just someone important. She was untouchable, and what he said next made the entire room freeze. Lena stepped off the bus with a notebook pressed tightly to her chest, her coat fluttering slightly in the morning breeze as the towering glass showroom came into view. She wasn't here to buy. She knew that her sneakers squeaked faintly against the marble tiles as she walked in, heart beating fast, but face composed. The luxury car showroom felt more like a museum than a store, sleek, spotless, filled with things far beyond her budget, but not beyond her admiration. She moved slowly, eyes wide with wonder, sketchbook trembling slightly in her hand. She had studied every model in brochures and online for months, but nothing compared to seeing them in person. The way the metal curves caught the light, the way the leather interiors looked like sculpture, the way the air itself seemed to smell like power. She approached the first car, an obsidian black Varelli V10, and began to sketch quietly, standing to the side so she wouldn't get in anyone's way. She didn't touch, she didn't even whisper, but already eyes had begun to follow her. A receptionist blinked, a salesman frowned, a suited man at the far desk leaned back in his chair and narrowed his eyes. She noticed? Of course she did, but she kept drawing, pretending she didn't. Her fingers moved gently over the page, catching the lines of the body, the angles of the grill. For her, it was art. For them, it was an offense waiting to happen. She had only been inside for 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Every movement Lena made, every quiet step, every glance toward a curve or detail was tracked, measured, judged. A salesman strolled past, her slowly looked her up and down, and muttered under his breath to the receptionist, loud enough for her to hear, "She's probably just here for selfies." Another one, with slicked back hair and a silk tie, approached her with a forced smile and a clipboard tucked under his arm. "Can I help you with something?" he asked already. Bored, Lena answered politely, her voice steady. "I'm a design student. I'm studying chassis construction. I was hoping to take a few notes for my thesis." The salesman raised an eyebrow, scanned her outfit. A faded hoodie, clean but worn jeans, scuffed shoes, and smirked. "We don't really do school tours here," he said. "But if you'd like a brochure, I suppose I can see if we have any extras lying around." The receptionist chuckled softly. Lena flushed but smiled. "A brochure would be great, thank you." He didn't move. "Do you have an appointment with a sales associate?" She shook her head. "No, I didn't think I'd need one. I'm not looking to buy, just learn." That was it. The shift in the air. The moment curiosity turned into condescension, he gave a clipped laugh. "Then maybe this isn't the right place for you. These cars start at 400 grand. Lena swallowed hard, trying to hold her ground. "I'm not here to buy. I'm here to study form and function. Materials angles. This isn't a college project." "Fair," he cut in. "You can look from the window like everyone else." And just like that, the room seemed to shrink. Other staff began glancing over, whispering. A couple standing by, a convertible stared, confused. A younger employee, maybe an intern, looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, but no one stepped in. Lena stood in the middle of it all, notebook still in hand, pride starting to fracture, but not fall. Not yet. Lena's fingers tightened around her notebook as the laughter grew sharper, closer, more deliberate. One of the salesmen stepped away from his polished desk and raised his voice just enough for nearby customers to hear. "Miss, unless you're here with a client or planning to purchase, I'm gonna have to ask you not to loiter." His words weren't coated with professionalism. They were dipped in sarcasm. Another voice chimed in from across the room. "Or maybe she's doing a price check for her rideshare gig." Chuckles followed. A wealthy-looking couple near the electric concept display turned and stared. The woman leaned into her partner and whispered behind a manicured hand, but her eyes never left Lena. Lena's heart raced, not from fear, from heat, embarrassment, shame, anger. She wouldn't let show. She steadied her voice and replied, I'm a student at Grayson Institute. I'm studying industrial design. I'm here because I respect the work that goes into these vehicles." The manager, tall, balding, with the posture of someone who had learned to bow only to bank accounts, approached with a fixed, tight-lipped expression. "Grayson, huh?" he said, eyeing her worn bag, the frayed hem of her jeans. "Do they teach etiquette at Grayson? Or just how to sketch in public spaces without permission?" The small crowd nearby gave a few stifled laughs. Lena inhaled deeply. "I didn't mean to offend anyone." I asked if I could look around. Yes, the manager cut in loud. Now and we said, "No." So I'll say it clearly. This is not a place for window shoppers, scholarship girls, or future Uber drivers. This is a curated luxury experience. And then without hesitation, he gestured toward the front door. Security, 2 uniformed guards appeared within seconds. One was polite, eyes low with discomfort. The other looked bored, as if this had happened before. "Ma'am," the first guard said gently, "I'll have to escort you out now." Lena's cheeks burned, not because she had done anything wrong, but because no one cared that she hadn't. Her voice caught in her throat as she glanced around the room. No allies, no kindness, only polished cruelty. She held her notebook like a shield and nodded. "I can walk." She walked toward the glass doors, slowly aware of every eye on her back. She could feel the satisfaction from the staff, the smugness in the air like they had expelled something impure. As the door opened and the street noise swept in, she turned once, not for them, but for herself. To remember, to mark this moment, because the girl they had just humiliated wasn't leaving, defeated. She was ready to leave. She stepped onto the sidewalk, exhaled, and pulled out her phone. One name in her call, history, she pressed it. It rang once, then came a voice, calm, deep, cold. "Is it done?" She nodded, her voice sharp now. "You were right. They didn't even let me speak." The line went silent for half a second. "Then stay where you are. I'll be there in 10. She hung up, across the street behind the tinted windows of a mat. Black rolls. Royce, the man she had just called, was already watching. He reached for his sunglasses, and the game finally began. Inside the showroom, the mockery was still fresh, still echoing between glass walls and polished steel. The receptionist scrolled through her phone, with a smirk drafting a message in the group chat with the other associates. "You won't believe the girl who just walked in. Legit thought she could drive a V10 in $30 sneakers. The salesmen were still laughing about the moment she was let out, how her voice cracked slightly, how she clutched that ugly little notebook like it was armor. One of them joked about staging a no peasant zone sign by the door. Mr. Crane, the floor manager, adjusted his tie in a mirror near the back, already thinking about the monthly sales awards, already erasing Lena from memory, already replacing her image with the next high-spending client who might walk through the door. But then the phone rang. The receptionist picked it up lazily. "Varelli. Exclusive, this is Chelsea. How may I?" Her voice dropped, her face lost color. Her body turned rigid. "One moment, sir," she stammered, holding out the receiver with both hands. He asked for you directly." Mr. Crane frowned and took the phone, annoyed, unaware. "This is Mr. Crane. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end was colder than steel and quieter than a threat. "This is Damon Rourke. I'm calling about the girl." "You just threw out." Crane blinked. "I'm sorry. That was my sister." The voice cut through, clean as a blade, "And you just humiliated her in a building that belongs to me." Crane's mouth went dry. A drop of sweat began to crawl down his temple. "Sir, I wasn't aware. I am outside. You have 3 minutes to clear the floor. Of customers, lock the doors and line up your staff. Do not speak to another soul. Do not attempt to explain. And for your sake, pray that I don't already know your name." The call ended. No goodbye. Just finality. Crane lowered the phone, his hand trembling. The air inside the showroom shifted heavier, sharper, charged with dread. He turned around slowly and barked, "Everyone, lock the doors, no one in or out. Clear the clients, do it now." One salesman started a protest, then stopped as Crane's expression registered. Something was wrong, not normal. Wrong, career, ending, wrong. The staff moved fast, curtains drew shut. The security guard near the elevator locked the side entrance. Customers were politely ushered out with awkward half apologies. Technical issue, one employee said. Private executive meeting, another lied. Then silence. A heavy humming, kind of silence filled the showroom. All the salespeople stood awkwardly near their stations, hands behind their backs, eyes darting. No one dared ask questions. Outside, the sky had darkened slightly. The hum of traffic dimmed, a sleek matte black. Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up to the curb. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the rear door. Out stepped Damon Rourke. He didn't wear logos or flash. His suit was perfectly tailored, his shoes clean enough to reflect the city lights, his hair slicked back with the ease of someone who never had to worry about time. His jaw was clenched, his lips tight, but it was his eyes behind the dark sunglasses that made the world stop. Controlled, calculating, cold. He walked with unhurried steps like time bent around his stride. Two assistants flanked him silently, one carrying a sleek folder, the other nothing at all. They weren't security. They didn't need to be. Damon Rourke was the weapon. The moment his hand touched the showroom door, every breath inside the building caught. The automatic glass parted and the world seemed to drop a few degrees. Mr. Crane stepped forward, unsure whether to bow or speak. He did. Neither Damon ignored him. He walked to the center of the showroom, turned slowly and scanned the room. His voice was low and absolute. "Where is the girl you threw out?" Crane's mouth opened, but no words came. The staff fidgeted. The receptionist looked ready to cry. "Bring her back in," Damon said. One of his aides was already dialing. Across the street, Lena stood near a coffee cart, sipping a paper cup and watching calmly. When the call came, she handed the coffee back to the vendor, straightened her shoulders and walked. The Rolls-Royce door opened for her. A moment later, the showroom doors opened again, and she stepped inside. This time, the marble tiles didn't swallow her. This time, every head turned not with ridicule, but regret. She walked beside her brother, as if the floor itself made space for her presence. Damon didn't touch her, didn't shield her. He simply walked beside her like a twin shadow made of fire. The silence inside the room was deafening. But it wasn't over yet, not even close. Damon turned to his staff. "Line up," he said. "You judge someone you were unworthy to serve. Now you'll find out who she really is." And just like that, the first twist had landed not like a punch, but like a seismic wave beneath polished floors. The girl they kicked out owned the very silence they now drowned in. The staff formed a crooked line, each face, pale, rigid eyes fixed forward, but minds racing with panic. No one dared whisper. No one even adjusted their collar. The receptionist clasped her hands tightly to stop them from trembling. "Mr. Crane stood at the far end, jaw-clenched sweat blooming at his neckline. Despite the cold blast of air conditioning, Lena stood next to her brother, now no longer the quiet girl with a sketchbook, but someone who carried the weight of power without ever asking for it. She didn't need to raise her voice, didn't need to smirk, didn't need to say a word, because Damon Rourke was speaking for her, and every syllable he released carried the weight of consequence. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, like he was walking through a battlefield and choosing which soldier would fall first. "Which one of you mocked my sister's shoes?" Silence. One salesman coughed softly but didn't move. "Which one of you said she didn't belong here?" Damon's voice was soft, but it slashed through the tension like a scalpel. Another employee shifted, looking down. Damon stopped in front of Mr. Crane. "You called security on her." Mr. Crane opened his mouth. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Damon interrupted, voice colder than marble. "You assumed, you judged, you dismissed. That tells me everything I need to know about how you lead and how you fail." Crane tried again, more desperate now. "She didn't introduce herself. She didn't say she was. She didn't have to." Damon cut in again. "Her presence here didn't require your permission. Her name didn't need to be spoken to deserve basic respect." He turned slowly, his voice louder now, for all to hear. "Let me be clear. My sister is not here to buy a car. She doesn't need one. She doesn't need your approval. She doesn't need this showroom." He paused, letting the silence settle, letting them squirm. "But I needed her to walk in here, exactly as she is, to see how this company treats people when it thinks no one is watching." He turned to Lena. "Did they pass?" Lena shook her head. "Just once." Damon nodded. "Then here's what's going to happen. He pulled a silver pen from his jacket pocket and handed it to one of his assistants, who opened a leather folder with documents already prepared. Effective immediately. Mr. Crane, you are relieved of your duties. Your access to all systems is revoked. You will be escorted out in 5 minutes. No appeals. Crane looked like he might faint. Damon didn't care. As for the rest of you, he continued, you will report to a mandatory 2-week retraining. If any of you feel that's beneath you, you're free to walk out that door now. But if you stay, you will never speak to a guest the way you spoke to my sister again. Do I make myself clear? A chorus of quiet nods followed. One woman whispered, yes, sir. Damon looked at Lena again, his eyes softer. You ready? She nodded. But before they turned to leave, she looked at the staff this time, with calm, not anger. Her voice was soft, but it rang through the space. I came here to admire the work. I came here with respect. What I got in return was proof of how much we still judge people by their shoes, their clothes, their silence. I don't want revenge. I want change. And with that, the girl they pushed out in shame walked out with every head bowed behind her. The moment they stepped outside, the world changed. Not because of flashing lights or headlines. None of that had happened yet. But because Lena no longer walked beside her brother as the girl who had been humiliated. She walked as someone who had been revealed. The black car door opened, but Damon didn't enter. Instead, he turned to her and asked quietly, you sure you want to do this? Lena nodded, and without hesitation, they turned around and stepped back into the same showroom that had just knelt in silence. The atmosphere inside hadn't recovered. Every employee stood like they were still on trial, and the air had the charged weight of thunder that never quite struck. Damon walked forward to the center of the room once more, but this time he let Lena take one step ahead of him. She stood in the center, simple clothes, same notebook in hand, but nothing about her felt small anymore. Damon spoke again this time with the force of finality. There's one more thing you should know. My sister isn't just someone I care about. She's not just family. She's one of the principal shareholders of Rourke Automotive Group. 30% ownership. That means every time a car leaves this showroom, a piece of that success traces back to her. Gasps rippled through the staff like electricity. Some looked at her with wide eyes, others looked down in shame. But Damon wasn't finished. You laughed at her sketches, he said. The same sketches that are currently being prototyped in our European design studio. You mocked her notebook. That notebook contains concepts your engineering department begged me to fast track. And the chair you pulled out from under her today, she built it. He turned toward the new assistant manager, a young man who had stayed silent but clearly shaken. How many of you know who designed the ridgeline? Z. The man hesitated, then said, the file said, E.G. Rourke. Damon smiled faintly. That's her, Elena Grace Rourke. She used initials because she didn't want to be judged, and you judged her anyway. Lena looked around, her voice, calm, unwavering. I came here without my title, without the name. I wanted to see how you treat someone when they can't offer you anything in return. And now I know, Damon's voice softened only for her. You decide what happens next. She was quiet for a long moment. Everyone waited. She didn't gloat. She didn't threaten. She simply said, I don't want apologies. I want reform. Damon nodded once, then we begin now. He turned to the staff. This showroom is closed for restructuring, effective immediately. A full diversity and ethics retraining will begin this week. New hiring practices, new leadership, and a new reminder on every desk. Our clients aren't just the ones who can afford what we sell. They're also the ones we can learn from. Then, the final blow. Damon stepped aside, pulled a tablet from his aide, and tapped once. And this, he added, turning the screen around, is the prototype she designed. You'll be seeing it again on the global stage. On the screen, the image of a stunning electric supercar appeared, with fluid lines, bold innovation, breathtaking beauty, and at the bottom corner, the signature LG Rourke. And with that, Damon and Lena walked out for the second time, but this time, no one watched them with judgment. They watched with reverence because now they knew the truth. The quiet girl with the sketchbook was never the outsider. She was the architect of everything they stood on. The following morning, headlines exploded across every major outlet. Humble girl revealed as billionaire heir after being humiliated in luxury showroom. The video clip, grainy shaky, was recorded by someone inside and showed Lena walking beside Damon, silent but unshakable. The press fixated on the spectacle, on the twist, on the image of a girl in worn sneakers, standing in a space built to intimidate her, only to own it entirely. But while the world raged in comment sections and debated status and humility, Lena stayed quiet. She wasn't interested in vengeance or validation. She sat alone in her design studio. That afternoon, surrounded by sketches, not screens. She didn't read the articles, she didn't repost the video. Instead, she reopened her notebook to the page where she'd drawn the Ridgeline Z concept, her first serious design, and began sketching a new one. When Damon entered the studio, he expected anger, or at least exhaustion. But she looked peaceful, focused. "The board is calling non-stop," he said. "They want a public response, a statement." Lena didn't look up, let them wait. Damon stepped closer. "We can issue suspensions, more terminations. There are still names we haven't." She cut him off gently. "That's not what I want." Finally, she looked at him. Her voice was quiet but absolute. "You built an empire. But I'm not here to inherit it. I'm here to redirect it." He watched her expression unreadable, "Then tell me what you want." She closed her notebook, stood, and faced him fully. "I want every showroom under our name to implement the open floor program. Once a month, we invite design students from underfunded schools to walk through, speak with engineers, and sit in the cars. No sales, no appointments, just access. I want every regional director trained to spot unconscious bias. And I want hiring incentives tied directly to ethics scores, not just sales." Damon blinked, surprised. "That's not reform, that's revolution." She smiled faintly. "Good," then she added more softly. "And one more thing. I want the showroom that pushed me out to host the pilot program." Damon's lips twitched into something like pride. "So you're not burning it down?" "No," she said. "I'm rebuilding it properly." That same day, as news crews camped outside the showroom, hoping for a quote, a quiet black car pulled up. Lena stepped out alone without an entourage. The staff, newly retrained, newly humbled, stood at attention. But she didn't scold them. She didn't gloat. She simply nodded, walked to the center of the space, and turned to address the first group of design students who had just arrived. Wide-eyed, full of nerves, notebooks in hand, just like she had been. "You belong here," she told them. "And you don't need a title to prove it." Somewhere in the back, a former employee, one who hadn't been fired but demoted, watched with glassy eyes. He remembered mocking her. Now he watched the same girl inspire 20 others to dream beyond their zip code. That was her fourth twist. Not reclaiming power, but redistributing it. Not punishment, but purpose. And it hit harder than any firing ever could. Because power gained is impressive, but power shared is unforgettable. The story refused to die. Days passed, then weeks, and still her name danced across headlines. Not because she sought attention, but because she defied every expectation without ever raising her voice. News anchors replayed the footage of her walking beside Damon like a quiet force. Talk shows debated the meaning of humility, of wealth, of inherited power versus earned respect. But what captured people most wasn't just the twist, it was the aftermath. The world had seen many public humiliations followed by retribution. But not like this. Lena hadn't sued, hadn't retaliated, hadn't played the victim or the heiress. She simply led, with grace, with logic, with impossible calm. And it spread. In another city, a teenage girl named Sophia walked into a luxury furniture gallery with nothing but a sketch pad and a trembling voice. The staff laughed at her questions whispered when she turned her back, but one employee had read about Lena Rourke, had watched her summit interview, and before anyone could escalate that, employee stepped forward and said, "Let her stay." The girl's sketches turned out to be extraordinary. She was later offered a scholarship by the gallery's design partner, all because someone decided to pause and remember. In a small town in Georgia, a car dealership implemented the open floor model just 1 month after Lena's announcement. They didn't wait for corporate approval. They simply opened their doors. Students from 3 different high schools showed up, one of them, Tyrese, 16. Nervous Brilliant sat in a prototype he'd only ever seen on a screen and whispered, "I never thought I'd touch something like this." Meanwhile, in Lena's studio, the walls had changed. Photos of students now covered the back panel, sketches from kids with no formal training. A few were framed, one had been turned into a full rendering by her team. That rendering would later inspire a concept interior for the 2030 Varelli electric line. But Lena still showed up every morning with her same coffee, same worn notebook, and same quiet walk through the floor before meetings. One day a journalist asked her, "What surprised you most about what happened?" She didn't hesitate. "How many people thought kindness was weakness?" The journalist laughed. "And what do you want people to learn from your story?" Lena looked into the camera, calm as always. That sometimes the person you're ignoring today is building the future you'll need tomorrow. That clip alone was shared over 18 million times, and still she stayed the same. She didn't chase a brand deal, she didn't monetize the moment. She turned the spotlight into a window and invited others in. And slowly something shifted. In classrooms, students stopped laughing when someone showed up underdressed. In design forums, professionals started mentoring anonymously. In meetings, executives began asking not just what ideas were on the table, but who was missing from it. Lena never called it a movement, but it moved people, because sometimes the strongest storms don't come with thunder. Sometimes they walk in quietly carrying nothing but truth. The screen fades from footage of Lena walking past the showroom to the calm face of a man in a navy blazer, seated in a quiet studio. Soft lighting, casting a gentle glow across his features. He's introduced as Dr. Marcus Ellison, Professor of Organizational Culture and Leadership at a top-tier university. He's not here to gossip or sensationalize. He's here to explain what so many had been feeling but couldn't put into words. What happened in that showroom wasn't just a class issue. He says voice smooth measured, it was a mirror, a test, and everyone failed except her. He leans forward slightly, hands clasped. In corporate culture, especially in high-value markets like automotive luxury status, is oxygen. But Lena Rourke walked in and breathed without it. That terrified them, because it forced them to confront the truth. Respect shouldn't require a price tag. The screen cuts briefly to a slowed clip of Lena smiling at the group of students during the open floor launch, then returns to Dr. Ellison. She could have used her name, could have dropped her title, could have snapped her fingers and reversed everything. But she didn't. She let them reveal themselves first. That's power. The story has taken a life of its own. Universities begin using it in ethics classes. CEOs mention it at conferences. Luxury brands rush to issue statements about dignity, first experiences, but none of them carry the same weight as the original moment when a quiet girl with a notebook stood her ground, while the world laughed and then returned, not with vengeance, but with vision. Lena never labeled herself a reformer. She never gave the viral clip a name, but others did. The silent standard. It trended for weeks, not as a scandal, as a story that changed how people moved through spaces. One intern posted, "Every time I feel like I don't belong in the room, I think of Lena and walk in anyway." A former showroom employee now working in community outreach wrote, "She didn't destroy us. She reminded us who we were supposed to be." And still, Lena remained almost impossibly calm through it all. When asked by a young interviewer how she stayed composed during the worst moment, she smiled softly, "Because I wasn't ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed of what they thought that meant." The clip went viral, again. But it was the final line of her most recent interview, short, simple, devastating, that left the deepest scar and the loudest echo. When asked, "What would you say to the man who called security on you that day?" Lena paused, looked into the camera. No anger, no trembling, just clarity. Then she said, "I'd thank him." The interviewer blinked. Why Lena's eyes didn't waver? Because without him, I might have stayed quiet. The screen faded to black, and the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt earned. They laughed at her because she looked ordinary. They dismissed her because she didn't speak their language of luxury. But what they forgot, what so many of us still forget, is that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It watches, it listens, it remembers. She could have ruined them. She chose to teach them. She could have stayed silent. She chose to rebuild the very system that rejected her. And the next time you look at someone with simple clothes, a quiet voice, or a notebook in their hand, ask yourself one question. Are you seeing their story or just your own judgment? Because the girl they forced out is now the reason they still have a door to walk through.